Butts outlined the case as to why Jody Wilson-Raybould's argument about unacceptable pressure, her truth, distorts his truth, or the truth as the Liberals see it. And the Prime Minister picked up the Butts' defense. Nothing illegal, nothing inappropriate. It's just all a great big misunderstanding. It's about politeness, not principle. So we've heard from the main players now what should happen next. Should Ms. Wilson-Raybould return to committee so we can get more answers? Let's find out. Joining me now, Liberal MP and Justice Committee member Randy Boissonnault. He's in Edmonton. Pierre Poilievre is the Conservative finance critic. He is here in Ottawa. And Tracey Ramsey is an NDP MP from Ontario. She is in Windsor. Great to see all of you. Mr. Boissonnault, I got to start with you. You're a member of the committee.
Sure.
You've called back Michael Wernick, the clerk, for a second time. Jody Wilson-Raybould wants to come back. Will you agree to call back Jody Wilson-Raybould?
Well, that's a discussion for the committee at its next meeting. And let's just clarify why Mr. Wernick and Mr. Wank came back. It was very clear that Ms. Wilson-Raybould and Mr. Butts were covered under the waiver. But Mr. Wernick and Mr. Wank testified before that waiver was issued. So the reason we had them to come back is so that they could speak under the cover of the same waiver that Ms. Wilson-Raybould and Mr. Butts did. And that was important for us to do.
To be fair, Jody Wilson-Raybould was not allowed to speak about any event after she was demoted. She wants to speak. Butts spoke about that time. She couldn't. Just please tell us, yes or no, will you agree to call her back?
Well, I'm not going to speak for the committee, Evan. That's a decision for the committee at its next Justice meeting. And what I can say is that the motion that we passed, what we're actually looking into is the interactions between the Attorney General and the SNC-Lavalin issue. It has nothing to do with her time after being AG.
All right, well, clearly Mr. Poilievre, clearly Jody Wilson-Raybould argues that it's material to her case, that she wants to speak. I can't get a straight answer from Mr. Boissonnault about if he'll agree or not. Should she come back to committee?
Yes, I will give you a straight answer on that point. She should come back. The reality is, material events may have happened after she was punted out of the Attorney General position, and those events ultimately led to her resignation. Did she find additional evidence of political interference and pressure? Did she find that she was lied to, had been lied to by the Prime Minister or others during her time as Attorney General, but did she learn about it afterwards? If the Liberals have nothing to hide, then they should let her come back and remove the entire gag order they originally imposed.
Tracey Ramsey, what's your take on what needs to happen next? Is that a critical step in your party's view?
Absolutely. That's why we've called, along with the opposition, for the emergency meeting that will happen next week to discuss this, because the Liberals voted it down when Mr. Butts was at committee this week. This makes no sense. You know, trying to say that they are going to look at the scope of this particular study just highlights the fact that the Justice Committee isn't the place to actually get down to the bottom of the truth. The place to do that is an independent public inquiry. That is what the NDP, we've been calling for consistently, and that is what is needed to get to the truth, because the Liberals are gatekeeping on the truth right now at that committee.
Let me just go back to Pierre Poilievre. What did you make of Justin Trudeau's take? Because we finally got his take about what happened. He didn't apologize for it, but he believes it's all a misunderstanding, nothing inappropriate, and he stands by his actions. Your take on his view now?
He has stated things that are factually impossible. Like, for example, he said yesterday, SNC could leave Canada altogether if it's prosecuted. That's not just untrue, it is impossible. The company has an agreement with the Caisse de dépôt, the Quebec Pension Fund, to stay for 7 years in Montreal. It has signed a 20-year lease. It has renovated its headquarters to accommodate its 2,000 employees there. It has contracts that must be executed here in Canada, like the one right here in Ottawa for a $600 million expansion of mass transit. It can't do that in another country. So that is a blatant falsehood, which either shows that the Prime Minister is breathtakingly ignorant of the facts or lying.
Okay. Mr. Boissonnault, obviously the Conservatives are asking the RCMP to investigate, and they think it meets the investigative threshold because of what Mr. Poilievre just said. Did the Prime Minister tell the truth? Was there political interference in justice? Where did they come up with this? Well, why don't you answer that question? Where did your government come up with this $9,000 stat on job losses? What's the evidence?
Well, the evidence is that there's 9,000 employees in Canada, and they're, just to state clearly for the record, only about 3,000 in Quebec. SNC-Lavalin employees are across the country, including 1,000 here in Alberta. And Evan, you know that I come from a part of the country that was hit hard by the downturn in the world price of, I'll get to that, Pierre. here in Alberta, we had 100,000 job losses thanks to the downturn in the world oil prices. We can't afford to have another 1,000 engineers put out of work because of a criminal proceeding that could lead to bankruptcy, that could then put all of those pensioners and all of those jobs at risk. I mean,
it's factually inaccurate.
Responsible and normal for the government to be defending jobs, and when you're looking at the options that are before you in a public policy consideration, if thousands and thousands of jobs we're doing the same thing. Mr. Baines has been very clear about the Oshawa situation. That's why we decided here in the West to make sure we're building the TMX pipeline across the country. And that's very important that the government's job is to defend
where is your
jobs.
Evidence that where is your evidence that those jobs are
Tracey Hold on, let me bring in Tracey Ramsey. Tracey Ramsey, I know you want to jump in. Go for it.
Yeah. There are many workers that this government has not stood up for, has not created public policy to protect jobs for, has not done anything for. The Prime Minister hasn't even been to Oshawa, where we're talking 40,000 jobs under threat. So this idea now that, you know, he'll stand up, even if it's 300 jobs he referenced, that's just not ringing true to Canadians.
Okay, last minute, Pierre Poilievre. I want to know what happens now. Jody Wilson-Raybould has said nothing illegal was done. Jody Wilson-Raybould said the system works. Jody Wilson-Raybould said I was never formally directed. She just said there was inappropriate pressure. Given all that, the Liberals say it's all a misunderstanding. What, in your mind, needs to happen next?
We need to hear the rest of Jody Wilson-Raybould's story before committee. And now that we have new evidence, I think we need to ask, did someone in the Prime Minister's team lie to Jody Wilson-Raybould about the headquarter jobs leaving the country, knowing that that was factually untrue? There are, for example, the Prime Minister has to specifically answer for the fact that he goes out and says she never raised any concern with him, even though she has testified before a parliamentary committee that she looked him in the eye and raised precisely the concerns that she has later made public. So those are all questions that need to be answered.
Tracey Ramsey, last word to you. What needs to happen next?
Jody Wilson-Raybould needs to come to finish her testimony. The Prime Minister needs to come under oath. We need a public inquiry, and we need to get down to the bottom of the truth, because what we're getting are snippets, and Canadians deserve better than that. We need the full truth to come out, and the Liberals to stop blocking it at the committee level.
All right, we'll watch what happens this week. Randy Boissonnault, Pierre Poilievre, and Tracey Ramsey, great to see all of you as this debate continues.